Today I want to talk to you about self-reflection. Self-reflection is one of the best tools a counselor will have. It's got two purposes. The one is to reflect on your practice. The one is to reflect on your client, the last client you had, what worked, what didn't work, what do you need to change. But the other purpose of self-reflection is actually to think of yourself. It's a way of self-care. How is this impacting you? How is this client actually, was there any transference? Was there any counter transference? Is there anything with this client that you actually need to take to your supervision? When you go to supervision, clinical supervision, there's a lot of self-reflection that's actually happening there. Your supervisor will ask you questions. What did you experience? How do you feel? How was your experience with your client? So there's a lot of self-reflection happening. Self-reflection is like a mirror, like looking into a mirror and describing what you see. So after a session of a client, it's like looking in a mirror and looking at what happened with your client and actually asking yourself what worked, what didn't work, what did I see? Did what I see, was it good or was it not so good? That's the sort of questions that you have to ask yourself about self-reflection. So self-reflection is looking into a mirror and describing what you see. It is a way of assessing yourself, your ways of working and how you study. Interesting. To put it simply, reflection means to think about something. Reflecting and composing a piece of self-reflective writing is becoming an increasingly important element to any form of study or learning. So self-reflection is actually also the purpose is actually to learn, to study yourself, to study how you work, to study how you worked with your client, to study what you've experienced during the session. But also, it's also self-reflection when you go to your clinical supervisor, who's actually almost your mentor, who's the person that will talk you through your clients, will help you to debrief. For me personally, self-reflection is also a time to debrief. What worked, what didn't work, what would I do differently, how will I cope, if this client comes back to me, how will it be? Especially I work with families and relationships, and also some of the reflections I need to do is, did I take sides? Sometimes one of the people will be the perpetrator, and do I make him or make her the perpetrator, or do I actually treat them as the same thing, same as if they are just my normal client? Was I judgmental? What worked for me? What use of self do I experience during the session? So there's a lot of things happening, and it's like looking into a mirror after a session and seeing where I'm going with this and what worked and what didn't work. Why is self-reflection important? So what they say here is reflecting helps you to develop your skills and review their effectiveness. So with self-reflection is you look at your skills. You look at how did I work with this? My micro skills, my paraphrasing, my questioning, open questions, closed questions. Did I ask too many closed questions? Was I at a position where I got stuck? How did I get unstuck with my client? What is my macro skills telling me? What's happening in my macro skills, not only in my micro skills? So that's stuff we need to talk about or reflect upon. Rather than just carry on doing things as you have always done it, it is about questioning in a positive way what you do and why you do it, and then deciding whether there is a better or a more efficient way of doing it in the future. Sometimes you do stuff with your clients and you work with a client and it's not really working. Something that you're doing is not really going the way you want it to go. And then that's where self-reflection comes in, and where you say to yourself, but I've been trying this for so many times. My gut feeling, which is also part of your macro skills, is saying to me that I need to go and explore a bit more about his past. And maybe it might be a good idea to go there. So where do you go with this? How do you follow this? And that is what's happening in your self-reflection. In any role, whether at home or at work, reflection is an important part of learning. You don't use a recipe a second time around if the dish didn't work the first time. That's interesting. We don't cook a recipe the second time if it didn't work the first time. Last week I made chocolate fudge, and it was a disaster. It boiled over in my microwave. It's the first time I tried to do fudge in the microwave. It's just one big mess. I've reflected about it, and I've decided on myself that I will never ever do chocolate fudge in the microwave again. So from now on, I will go back to the traditional way that my mother did, the South African way of making fudge on the stove. So that was a bit of reflection I had to do myself. You wouldn't use a recipe 2 times like I'm going to do now. You would either adjust the recipe or find a new and hopefully better one, or go back to the old one that worked originally. When we learn, we can become stuck in a routine that may not be working effectively. And as I say, that one of the definitions of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result every single time. So are we all insane, or are we just going to sit a bit, reflect on the process, what's happening, reflect on what I'm experiencing, how I'm experiencing it, and what can I do different? And that's part of the purpose of reflecting. You will speak to many counselors, and they will tell you the importance of reflecting. They will tell you how important it is to reflect on your practice, reflect on what you do, even reflect on your private life. It's always good to just reflect and get into the habit of reflecting. I'm going to give you a few exercises later to do, and if you're watching by video YouTube, you're welcome also to do these exercises. I'll give some time, but you're also welcome to email me and ask for the PowerPoint, and you can do this exercise at home also. It's just easier for you to actually reflect on this in your private home. Alright, learning how to reflect. Okay, how do I reflect? Life is really, really busy. We all know that. So, how do I reflect? Sorry for the camera malfunction there for a moment. But how do I reflect? First of all, I have to find a time to reflect. I have to find some time that I can sit and reflect. It's sometimes good to reflect after you had a client. If you have a few clients in a row, not so great to reflect between clients. If you can, it's awesome. But if you don't, make sure that you have time to reflect. Be still. It's not a good time to reflect while you're watching Home and Away, or watching the news, or having a day out with your kids. Reflect on yourself and your experiences. So what did I experience during this session? What happened for me during this session? How did I react? How do I feel about what's happening? So learning to reflect is, I have to find the time. I must be still. So still, that's a bit of mindfulness happening there. Reflect on yourself and your experiences. Don't keep on reflecting on your client. Reflect on what you are doing, what you are experiencing, how things are going for you. What is your gut feeling saying? So what is some of the theories saying? And is it good to go with CBT or PCT. Maybe you're busy with CBT and you realize that CBT is not working. It might be good to go for something like person-centered or ACT or narrative. It might be good to change things around. So that's part of the fact that we reflect. Okay. Learning to reflect. Using reflection to improve your life. Access your core values. Analyze your goals and change the way you think. Core values. This is on personal stuff. What is your core values? What are your values? What's the values? What's your values as a counselor? What do you want to achieve? And go for it. Analyze your goals. What do you want to achieve? Also, if you want to be a counselor in practice, where do you see yourself as a counselor? Where do you see your practice going? What sort of counselor do you want to be? Do you want to be a family counselor, relationship counselor? Do you want to be someone that works with youth, with children? Reflect on those things. You will also see that sometimes you'll change. You'll start out with maybe working with children, and as time goes by, you realize, but hey, I'm better with adults. And you may flip over to adults. But that all takes time of your reflection and analyzing and deciding where do you need to go. Reflection is a great tool for any counselor. And unfortunately, not every course teaches reflection and teaches the importance of reflection. I will go to my supervisor sometimes and we'll talk about something. And the other day we had an issue, or not an issue, I mentioned that I feel uncomfortable when I've got clients that actually cry. That becomes very emotional. And she took me on a journey and say, okay, I want you to reflect on that. Why do you feel uncomfortable? What's happening? And it's stuff that happened in my past, and we worked with that. So it's always good to look at your core values, look at what's happening with your goals, and then change the way you think. I'm started to change the way I think about emotional clients. It's not like, oh no, not another emotional one. It's like, great, let's go there. Let's see what we can do. Let me stretch my own way of thinking, and also in the process help my client. Okay. Learning to reflect on the world around you. Analyze your experiences. Analyze what's happening around you. What do you experience? What do you experience in the counseling room? What do you experience in your relationships with other people? If you're a person that's like always arguing with people, maybe it's time to reflect on why. What's making you so uncomfortable? Or what's making you so angry? I live in a complex, and there's a lady in the complex. She lives in number 100. And she is the most unhappy person I've ever seen, because she complains about every single thing. If someone parks where they're not supposed to park, she runs out and she takes a photo and sends it to the management office. If you drive past and you're a bit too fast, she runs out and she shouts at you. If you wave at her, she looks at you as if she's giving you the death stare. She never waves back. She's just unhappy. That lady needs to reflect on why is she always unhappy. I'm trying to reflect on it, but I can't get the answer because she's got the answer. So evaluate your relationships. If your relationships are not working, if you're constantly fighting with people, or if you're constantly fighting with your children, what's happening? What's happening? Are there stuff that you need to change? Are there stuff that you need to look into to change? That's why we reflect. Maybe sometimes it's good for us, especially as parents, to actually admit we're doing stuff wrong too. I'm not taking the side of the kids here, but admit we're doing stuff wrong, and actually sit with your child and say, hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I lost my temper, or I'm sorry that I did something there which I wasn't supposed to do. Reflect. Also use reflection to avoid arguments. That's finding the meaning. Sometimes someone says something to you and you're really upset and you want to jump up and actually just give it to them. Reflect on what's happening. Reflect on what they're saying. Reflect on how you choose to react. There's a story I want to share with you, which someone once told me. He said, let's say I'm telling the story now as I am, And one of you decide you really don't like what I'm saying. You're drinking a glass of Coke, and you chuck the Coke at me. And then I go to you and I start strangling you because you just made me very upset. And then someone else comes in and say, hey, what are you doing? And I'm saying, like, I'm so upset because this guy, he made me angry. That is not true. Because this guy didn't make me angry. All he did was he made me wet. I chose to become angry. I chose to become upset. So, reflect on your arguments. Reflect on, well, what am I going to choose? Am I going to choose to lose it? Am I going to choose to just chill? Am I going to choose to walk away? Am I going to choose to actually just raise my blood pressure and get really upset? Choose how you react to arguments. Reflect on that. There's a lot of stuff that we can do. There's a lot of ways that we can make life much more comfortable for all of us if we choose to reflect on stuff happening around us. Some tips on reflection. Focus using your senses and the emotion you felt at the time. I'm sitting with a client. What do you experience? What do you sense while sitting with that client? What do you experience? What's happening for you? Use of self. What do you feel in your body? Do you feel tense in your shoulders? Do you feel pain? Do you feel tenseness in the back of your neck? What do you experience? What emotions do you feel? Do you feel sad while your client is with you? Move your reflection. The more you reflect, the better you'll get at it. So it's an exercise, and it's like counseling. Practice. The more you practice, the better you become at counseling. Also with reflection. The more you reflect, the better you'll become at this. And the better you become at reflection, the better counselor you'll be. If you have a lot of negative thoughts, work on becoming a more positive person. That's also reflection. Why, when you get to work, you're always ready for a fight? Reflect on that. Reflect on what are you experiencing now. Even now while we're talking, there might be issues in your life which you realize that these things keep on coming up. And the stuff I need to deal with before I can become a counselor. There's stuff I need to deal with before I start working with people. And I want you to take a moment or two, even after after watching this, just spend some time, quiet time, reflecting. What do you need to work at to become a great counselor? What can prevent you from becoming a good counselor? As I always say, that a diploma doesn't make you a counselor. If you deal with this stuff while you're busy studying, once you've dealt with it, you can be an awesome counselor. Reflective questions. I want you to ask yourself, strengths. What are your strengths? What are your strengths? And if you've got a piece of paper, this is a good time to actually just write it down now. What are your strengths? For example, I am well organized. I do remember things well. I'm good with names. I'm good with faces. What are your strengths? So for a few moments, reflect on this. What are your strengths? What are your strengths? Next thing I want you to reflect on is, what skills do I have and what am I good at? What skills do you have and what are you good at? Are you good at working with children? Do you have a passion for old people? Do you have a passion to write stories? What skills are you good at? What's your skills and what are you good at? I'm sorry, the video isn't that clear on the writing. What skills am I good at? Then reflect on the following. Reflect on, what problems are there at work, at home, that may affect me? What problems are there at work, home, that may affect me? For example, what's my responsibilities or distractions that may impact on my study or my work? What are the things that will have an impact on your study or your work? Now, as I said earlier, if you want to, you can just request I send you these PowerPoints. What problems are there at work, at home, that may affect you? For example, what your responsibilities or distractions that may impact on your study or your work. Achievements. What have I achieved? What achievements have you had in life? What are your achievements? What have you achieved? There's all sorts of achievements. I'm not only talking about diplomas or qualifications. It's all sorts of stuff. I have achieved being a great dad, or I have achieved whatever. I've reached a goal. I had a dream. Whatever. What is your achievements? This one, interesting one, is happiness. What are things that I am unhappy with and disappointed about, and what makes me happy? What are things that I'm unhappy about in my own life and I'm disappointed about? What makes me happy? I'm disappointed in the fact that I maybe have a short temper. What makes me happy? Spending time with my family, cooking. What makes you happy? Reflect on the following solutions. What do I do to improve in these areas? We mentioned areas. What makes you unhappy? What's distractions? What can you do with the things in your life that makes you unhappy? The things that makes you feel unsatisfied? What can you do to improve in these areas? Here's a picture, and I want you to reflect. If you can see the picture, it's hands behind bars. I want you to reflect on that picture for a moment, and what can you think of that picture? What meaning can that picture have on your life? Or what can that picture mean to you? It can be frustration because you're stuck in a lifestyle which you don't want to be and you feel like you want to break out of it. But that's just what I'm thinking now. But what can you reflect on that picture, on your personal life? This is a cool one. Guy on a pillow, alarm clock next to him. I hope you can see that picture clearly. What can that picture mean to you? That's a few exercises in reflection. Practice reflection. Practice looking at pictures and say, what does this say to me? What does this mean to me? What impact would this have on my life? Where do I see myself? Practice reflection. It's not a journal. It's not like keeping a journal. It's on reflecting on experiences. What do you experience today? You had an argument with your spouse, with your partner, with your mother, your father, your children, with someone at work. Go and sit and reflect. What happened there? What were you experiencing? What was happening in that situation? What can you take from it? What can you learn from it? So use all these things to your advantage. Reflection is part of counseling. I like to send my clients home with some homework, although I never call it homework. I normally say, I want you to go and reflect on an issue about your children, or I want you to go and reflect on how you will handle this differently, or I want you to reflect on what can you do to change a situation. Reflection plays a role, and I'm trying to teach my clients also to reflect. Reflection is also a way of debriefing. It's a way of self-care, because as a counselor you need self-care. So please don't stop practicing reflection of meaning, reflection of feeling, reflection of the situation, reflection of how you could have done things differently. Keep reflecting, and the more you practice, the better you'll be. Gary Player said, the more I practice, the luckier I get. Same with our reflection work. So have an awesome time reflecting